Detroit, the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix from Belle Isle Park in Detroit, Michigan. The beautiful Scott Fountain, the boats on the river, and the skyline of Detroit City behind us as we are ready for what should be a most exciting day. We'll begin it with the most famous command in racing.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
The command by Mayor Coleman Young of Detroit, the engines are fired into life on a day that is overcast, but at the moment it's forecast for clearing, and a day that holds so many promising stories. Let's begin trackside with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, one of the big stories is the man sitting in the cockpit here is not Rick Mears. It's the youngster Paul Tracy. Now, Mears is resting comfortably on the mend after 2 crashes at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's back in his home in Jupiter, Florida. And taking over is Tracy. Tracy, who's had an up-and-down type season, crashing several cars. Came here. He's not been on a road course since last November. He out-qualified the 2-time national driving champion, Emerson Fittipaldi, a Formula One champion in his own right. Now, the crew, their main concern is the fact that he is not as communicative. He doesn't have as much experience. Things they take for granted, they're going to have to talk him through. Tracy, on the other hand, says that he's out here to gain points, take points away from the competition, because Team Penske wants Emerson Fittipaldi to go for the championship. For another big story, let's check in with my colleague, Gary Gerald.
And Jack, as this field streams by us, we're in the Andretti pit. Michael Andretti, still a prominent story in IndyCar racing, had monumental problems on Friday. Couldn't even attempt a qualifying lap because of an electronics problem. Came back yesterday in the final session, won the pole for the 3rd time in 4 events this year. But Michael's problem has been finishing. His best finish, 10th at Phoenix. Now, another angle to this story, Mario, his normal teammate, not in uniform today. Teo Fabi, who hadn't been in an IndyCar for 2 years, summoned from Italy. He's in the other Newman-Haas entry. He qualified 3rd. The Newman-Haas team, definitely a team to watch as we get ready for racing here at Belle Isle. Let's go back to Paul.
Just some of the great stories we're going to be covering here today. You know, when they picked Belle Isle as the new site for this event, they couldn't have picked a better location. It is, in fact, an island in the Detroit River, which at this point is the boundary between the United States and Canada. It's connected only to the U.S. side by the MacArthur Bridge just behind us. It's always been a city park, so the course winds through lush greenery and around some beautiful fountains, past an old unused casino, and along the water's edge. It makes for a very challenging race circuit. And the beauty of this facility, I think, predicts not only a great and challenging race, but a great future for this event. Now, let's get you updated on a couple of the injuries at the Indianapolis 500. First of all, Rick Mears is not racing here today. He's probably going to drive at the next event. Emerson Fittipaldi is in good shape and in the cockpit today. Hiro Matsushita and Jimmy Vasser both suffered broken femurs. They'll be out a little bit longer. Mario Andretti is a spectator here today, though he is on crutches with some very sore feet. And his son, Jeff Andretti, is still in the hospital. He is out for the season. Now that the Indy 500 is over, though, Sam Posey, there's a whole change in the mood.
Oh, definitely. Indy is always a tough, pressure-filled month, and this year it became a nightmare because of the crashes and the injuries. But now we come here to Belle Isle, and it really is a beautiful place, as you said, to a track where the average speed is 130 miles an hour less than it was at Indy. And talking to the drivers, you can almost sense the relief at being here. And the focus changes, too, from an individual race to the battle for the PPG championship. As you can see, the top 4 drivers, each of whom has won a race, are very close. And a 5th driver, Michael Andretti, is long overdue for a win that would move him into contention. Belle Isle, an emotional turning point that could be a turning point in the championship as well.
And then, of course, there's the track itself. It's brand new, very little test time, and quite a challenge, Bobby Unser.
Well, Paul, a new track, and especially a new temporary circuit, is very hard on these teams. Because it's a street course, there is no testing time, so every lap of this race is part of the testing process. Some drivers, like Teo Fabi and Bobby Rahal, are good at getting a car set up fast, and that skill may make the difference here today. This track has very few places to pass, so the drivers who can figure it all out and communicate the changes to their crews will definitely have the best advantage here today.
We look over Michael Andretti's right shoulder as they're on the parade laps. A great day, a great track. Let's take a look at the way they qualified for today's race. On the pole, it's Michael Andretti, the third pole this year for the 1990 Detroit winner. Alongside is Bobby Rahal, the flag-to-flag winner this year at Phoenix. In the second row, it's Teo Fabi, replacing the injured Mario Andretti. And Paul Tracy is outside, filling in for Rick Mears. In the third row, Emerson Fittipaldi, a two-time winner of the Detroit Grand Prix. And Rahal Boysell, a substitute at Indy, but now in the saddle full-time. Row 4 on the inside is Unser Jr., the winner of the Indianapolis 500. And Stefan Johansson, a Formula One driver making his first IndyCar start. The inside of the fifth row is Scott Pruett, who finished second in the 1989 Detroit event. And John Andretti, he has 3 top 10 efforts this season. In row 6, it's Danny Sullivan, the winner at Long Beach. Alongside is Eddie Cheever, who finished third here 2 years ago. The seventh row, Robbie Gordon, making his first IndyCar start. And Scott Goodyear, the record runner-up at Indianapolis. In row 8 on the inside, it's Scott Brayton, who finished 9th here a year ago. And Christian Danner, the former German touring car champion. Row 9 on the inside is Brian Till, a graduate of the Indy light ranks. And Eric Bachelart, an impressive freshman driver. The 10th row, Ted Prappas. His best career finishes have come on temporary road courses. And Brian Bonner, a rookie driving for A.J. Foyt. In row 11, Jeff Wood, making his third start here in Detroit. And Buddy Lazier, a ski champion out of Colorado. In row 12, Ross Bentley, making his 4th career start in the Indy cars. And Mike Groff in Derek Walker's second car. And in the 13th and final row, Jay Hill, another first-time IndyCar driver. And Dennis Votillo in his first run here at Detroit. Now, that's the way they qualified yesterday. There have been some changes this morning. Mike Groff and Dennis Votillo's cars have both been withdrawn from the competition, and everyone else will move up the spots accordingly, according to the rules. So now they begin to warm their tires on this tight, rather picturesque circuit. I know you're going to enjoy some of the view we have here today. It's cool at the moment. Partly cloudy is the forecast. There have been some sprinkles of rain. We certainly hope that that goes away today. The chassis that are competing in this race, still the LOLA is strongly favored here today. 2 Galmers, 2 Penske's, a True Sports. And the engines, both of the Chevrolets, the Ford Cosworth. We see the Cosworth DFS back, and the Buick and the Judd. Indy 500 prize money. Look at what Al Unser Jr. took home. Scott Goodyear didn't do bad as well, as that's the payout from the Indianapolis 500 given at the banquet the day after the race. And in this race, well, what about the new kids this week, this month, and this year? Stefan Johansson out of Formula One, Christian Danner, Jay Hill making his first start, Robbie Gordon, with plenty of fans for each of those. They have some considerable experience, several of them, and we expect much out of them today. So now they work their way around this course. Bobby Unser, it's a course that you've found most interesting and challenging.
Boy, I'll tell you, it's a crooked course, Paul. You just watch it wind around. It's one of the prettiest courses I've ever seen, but it's going to be very hard to pass because the cars go from right to left, back and forth. That makes it really hard for the guy behind trying to get by.
Now, the report from official control is that because of the changing weather conditions, and also I suspect some concern from yesterday where the course really hadn't had time to cure and was torn up by the Trans Am run, they are going to start the race with Nick Fenoro's yellow flag out. So they will start counting the laps with the yellow flag. There's the president of ITT Automotive.
This is caused mainly by the rain, Paul. It's sprinkling, and of course, as large as this track is, 2 miles around, it could be dry in one place and raining in other places.
So the races now, as they went over the start-finish line there, officially started. That is, they've started counting laps. But of course, the race itself does not count because no one is able to go at one another. The yellow flags are displayed around the course. Sam Posey, I wonder what kind of interrupting sensation that means for a driver.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously, this is being done for the safety of the drivers, but also psychologically, it's really tough. You were ready to race at that point, and now you're making a slow lap here, wondering exactly what is going to happen.
Well, actually, it's going to make it a little bit nicer, too, Stan, because watch the guys. They're able to go a little bit faster than they would if they were lined up side by side. They can scrub their tires a little bit harder, and the idea, of course, is to work the rubber around a little bit, make it bite a little bit better. The pace car's going faster, too, as you can see.
Johnny Rutherford in the pace car. This man, Michael Andretti, has been on the two-way radio, as has Bobby Rahal, with Billy Camphausen and Bill Luchow, two of the officials here, and they have been consulting one another on exactly what they should do on getting this race started safely and cleanly. Let's go pit side and Jack Arute.
Paul, all of the runners have started on the slick tires. There's no tread on these. If it should begin to rain more than it is now, they will have to come in and they will begin to switch to these treaded tires. It is not for grip except in the rain because it routes the water away and gives a better footprint on the track. Now, the way that we'll be able to tell if they're going to have to come in and get rain tires, and checking with the crew chiefs, they say when you begin to see rooster tails from the tire ever so slightly, that's when you have to consider going to the rains.
We hope the rain tires are not part of the formula here today.
There's another thing. That's totally up to the driver themselves. The crews, just so everybody knows, does not call the driver in. The driver decides himself when he wants the rain tires.
One thing about this track, you notice the concrete walls that line it. There isn't any room for error here. A spinning car could collect another car, leading to a multiple accident. One good thing, though, as I said earlier, the speeds are much lower here than they were at Indianapolis. So I think if we see accidents, they, I hope, will not be as severe as what we saw 2 weeks ago.
Get some idea of just how beautiful this race course is. Johnny Rutherford in the pace car, a Cadillac Alante, pulled off the track, and there comes the green flag, and we are running already at Belle Isle in Detroit as Michael Andretti jumps ahead of Bobby Rahal. Rest of the field coming through very nicely. Now the challenge comes up as Paul Tracy moves up to challenge. And one car goes sideways.
Brian Till has spun here. You see the pock marking of the track there. It's damp out of the line. Everything okay. He's back in action.
Brian Till moves back to the fight as the fight here is for second place. As Paul Tracy, driving for Rick Mears, moves up to challenge Bobby Rahal. Michael Andretti runs in front.
Andretti was terrific in practice and qualifying, lashing this car around the track. He's driving more conservatively by far now, Bobby. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, he is. In other words, the track is damp. It could have little tiny wet spots on it you can't see. Michael, you can watch the car jerking around a lot. So he's just watching his rear view mirrors, doing the best he can so nobody can get a run at him. But nobody's going to right now. They're all having the same problem he is.
And look at Rahal as he comes very, very stricken off the corner. Right behind him is Paul Tracy as he continues to mount a charge.
Another thing that causes these cars to jerk around a little bit, get loose coming off the turns like you see, is the races that they've run previously put down different types of rubber compound on the ground, and that makes it slippery for a little while.
They talk about how important is the driver. How much does he really count? Looking at Paul Tracy here, I can tell you, it counts for an awful lot in conditions like this on a tight, twisty course where no mistakes can be gotten away with. Tracy has a lot of pressure on him to succeed. He's trying to fill in for Rick Mears, of course, but more importantly, you see Fabi there also doing a very good job. Tracy is trying to keep his ride and the opportunity to become a full-time Penske driver. If he succeeds here, he will.
Tail Fabi is being chased by this man, Emerson Fittipaldi. Tail Fabi in the number 2 car, normally handled by Mario Andretti. Raul Boisel is now moving to close on Emerson Fittipaldi as well. Paul Tracy's normal instructions, Sam Posey, in a race are, take it easy, we just want you to learn. Do you suspect they've changed for today?
Oh, no question. He's standing on the gas, and he's doing it brilliantly. This is the kind, I talked to him the other day, this is the kind of racing he's more used to. His background lends itself more to this sort of city street course racing than the big ovals, which he had been asked to do for Penske before.
Now watch here, Paul, right there where they run over the light-colored pavement. That's cement that's been laid down. The track was new, the pavement was new. It was tearing up the last couple of days, so they've laid that down so it won't dig out anymore.
2 laps into the record book. Now let's go back to the start of the race, which really after the first lap of yellow. Take a look at the number 24 car, Brian Till, as he was moving for position. Well, it looks like several cars got close together, and like Brian Till got caught on the high side of the line and almost got clipped.
That was Jeff Wood that just snuck by there. That was very good driving by everybody.
It certainly was, but it was very bad by Brian Till. It was a very bad start, a lack of experience. He shouldn't lose it at the start like that. What they do is they just lose the grip of the rear tires.
On board now, Al Unser Jr., the Indianapolis 500 champion. He currently runs in 7th place. Right behind him, that's Stefan Johansson, driving for Tony Bettenhausen this weekend. Scott Pruett, John Andretti, and right behind John is Danny Sullivan. So a whole group lined up and really battling for 7th. You're on board now with Scott Pruett.
Scott Pruett, that's now what they call the back straightaway. You notice how you go to the left right there. Now they brake really hard. Here's a turn to the right. That's kind of sharp. The next turn tightens up more than a quick one to the left. Now you can see from that how hard it is to pass there.
So the race on Belle Isle in Detroit is underway. Michael Andretti jumps off the pole, picks up the lead. We're 3 laps into a 77-lap run now. 161 miles lie ahead.
We built this business.
We're a world.
The ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. Brought to you by ITT Corporation, building people's dreams. By Chevrolet, the heartbeat of America. The cars more people depend on. By Budweiser, the king of beers, with that clean, crisp, cold taste. Nothing beats a Bud. And by Goodyear, #1 in tires.
Back at the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix, as we're watching a battle for 7th, let's take a look at the lineup for the leaders. Michael Andretti, of course, in front. Bobby Rahal just during the quickest lap of the race at just under 80 miles an hour. In 2nd, Paul Tracy 3rd. Teo Fabi filling in for Mario Andretti is 4th. Emerson Fittipaldi currently runs 5th. A course like this, you're not going to see the really spectacular speeds as an overall lap average, but let me assure you, Bobby, they are getting up.
Boy, they are, but watch here. Little Al has been falling behind a little bit from the 5th place spot just ahead of him. And look at Johansson, a new guy here for IndyCar racing in Tony Bettenhausen's car. Watch him here. He has literally been all over Little Al. John Andretti is coming up, and he's been all over Johansson. So we really have a race right here.
Course marshals are reporting that there may be a fire on Scott Goodyear's car. We'll keep an eye out for that. There's John Andretti right behind Johansson. A great battle here. Michael Andretti has led now 12 of the last 13 races and all 4 of the events here at Detroit. There is the fire we just suggested to you, and that's fairly serious fire.
That's a pretty good fire. That's burning the carbon fiber, all the stuff in the back, and he's going to have to park on the track, so the yellow's going to have to come out.
See the damage to the left rear wheel? It's sharply towed out, so all this is a result of having made contact with the wall.
So Scott Goodyear, after that spectacular finish at the Indianapolis 500, the closest runner-up ever, climbs away from his burning car as the course marshals rush to his aid and rush to get that fire out.
So the people can tell on the burning also. Dark smoke means something rubber or plastic, fiberglass, carbon fiber burning. The fuel burns with clear fire.
Look what a great guy he is, though. Rather than risk one of these volunteer course marshals, Scott Goodyear is going to handle the job himself. He pours water to try and keep the material cool, because you can get reignition if you don't get that carbon fiber surface cooled down.
What a disappointment for him, with so many fans coming to watch this race from Canada. He's, of course, Canada's latest sporting hero.
The reason that these yellow flags fly is, of course, Scott Goodyear's car sitting on the course. They will find substantial damage when they get that car in. And you saw why it's so important to get the course clear, because with all that smoke and powder drifting across, it can be quite dangerous for the other drivers, discounting the position of the race car on the track. We're under yellow. So now the pace car pulls clear. Michael Andretti begins to accelerate. It's a curve front straight here. There it is. The green flag is out, and we're back running once again. All bundled up nice and neat. The field runs together.
Tracy had some trouble there in that second turn, got a little bit wide. You see him there. He recovered nicely and kept Fabi at bay.
John Andretti closes down, trying to get a pass. Car just in front of him, but the battle remains right at the front of the field. Remember when they first came out with the green, Michael Andretti was able to pull away quite handily. Let's see if he can do it again.
Well, often you watch little Al and John Andretti there. Now, John is the one that's been real aggressive. There's Emerson Fittipaldi.
Emerson Fittipaldi comes past Teo Fabi.
Now, that's a rare thing. That's a good pass. That was a pass that we went around the racetrack yesterday and said, hey, this is one of the few places you can pass, going on to a real short straightaway up over the bridge.
So now the battle breaks off between Fittipaldi and Teo Fabi. And just behind Teo Fabi at the moment is Rahal Boisel. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Paul, quick word on Teo Fabi. He says the car is loose. They've already decided that they'll have to make a wing adjustment on the first available pit stop. Michael Andretti, the leader, also complaining his car is loose. They haven't decided if they'll have to make a change when he comes in.
Rahal Boisel darts to the right, takes a look at Teo Fabi's car to see if he can duck to the inside and get past him. Decided that he can't do it there. Fittipaldi now begins to inch away from Fabi.
This is a race of split-second decisions. Do you think you have a chance to go by under braking? Can you squeeze inside?
There he goes. Just that easy.
He
Roll
takes
right
that
through.
chance. Yep. But I must say also about Fabi, he's a man that always looks in his mirrors and is rarely involved in car-to-car contact.
And look at John Andretti as he comes down and tries inside Fabi. Can't get it done.
Everybody can ride with the drivers here, and they can see, and you can imagine how hard it is to pass. Where would you do it if you were following? John Andretti is sitting there looking very similar to how we are, and when they see the car move to the left, and they decide to go to the right, will the guy come down on you? Like right there. John wanted to, but he saw that wall. He couldn't
Also,
make it.
don't you think John is showing himself there? You see now, it's a very exciting view from Little Al's cockpit. John on the inside now should be able to make this good. No,
it's going to be tense as they come through the corner. No, he has to duck in behind because it's a right-hander that comes just off that little switchback. And so what John gained, he now has to give up.
But I don't think John, or I've seen John Andretti, as aggressive as he is here. He obviously is really liking Detroit racetrack.
On board, Al Unser Jr., the Indianapolis 500-mile champion, a millionaire, made a millionaire just 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis, as he currently runs in 8th place.
Another thing, you can watch on John Andretti following Fabi. They're right there. There's Fabi in the front, Andretti in the yellow car. Now, Andretti knows he has problems, so he's like a coyote stalking, and he's just waiting for Fabi to make a little mistake, and then he'll have him.
conversely, of course, Fabi is a tough-minded young Italian, and he is not going to give anything away that he doesn't have to. We see Michael Andretti now, of course, with Bobby Rahal right behind him. The two qualified only a tenth of a second apart. So Michael has not had on this track the superiority which he enjoyed 2 weeks ago at Indianapolis.
Michael Andretti has completed 16 laps now. This, the helicopter view, as the helicopter tries to chase them down along the riverside. Boy, what a magnificent view that is as they make the right turn in. And this is just off the edge of the old casino building. In fact, Emerson Fittipaldi dubbed this Casino Corner. Now they come back through and move on to Sunset. When they make this turn here, it's called Sunset because the cars are right now looking due west. The river at this point runs east and west. Now a very, very tight turn. And you can see that Rahal is closing down on the leader, Michael Andretti. So Michael really wasn't able to pull that far away. They come around to complete now the 17th lap.
Paul Tracy, look at Paul Tracy right behind there. Now, we normally wouldn't expect this from Paul Tracy. He's a kind of like a rookie, even though he's been around a little bit. As Jack mentioned earlier, he's wrecked a couple of times. You think he'd be taking it easy, but I'm telling you, if he's running with that group, he's running fast. And he's definitely running hard.
All right, let's get an update now on Paul Tracy. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, Roger Penske usually, as we said at the top of the show, coaches his #1 driver, Rick Mears. Well, today he is coaching his driver, the backup driver, Paul Tracy. Throughout the day on the radio, he's been saying, Paul, take it nice and easy. Paul, you're looking good. But the most prophetic statement he's made so far was just moments ago when he said, Paul, remember, it's a long race.
77 laps long, 17 laps are complete. This is only Tracy's second road course start driving for Roger Penske. The other one was 1991 Laguna Seca.
It was exactly a year ago at Milwaukee that Roger Penske announced the signing of Paul Tracy. I was there at the press conference. It was interesting. Every time the press asked a question of Paul Tracy, Roger would answer for him. And I think now he would like very much for Paul Tracy to take his advice and run this race with a good, clear head. It's shown, obviously, Tracy has the talent to be a great driver.
Here's a driver summary on Michael Andretti, a computer-generated material developed by Walter Boland. Really a nice piece of information. Look at all that great stat that we have there. That's super. We hope to have this throughout the day for you.
Just one more thing on Paul Tracy, not to take away from him, but you know, when he gets into this car, he's getting into Rick Mears' car. That means that the best mechanics on the team belong to Rick Mears. Today, they belong to Paul Tracy.
What do you think Rick Mears is thinking, sitting at home in Jupiter, Florida, and watching his car perform? That is a very tough thing for a racing driver.
He's loving it because it's his people that he's been working with that are making this car go fast.
Paul, Paul Tracy, good driver. Well, you can see that by the fact that he's right on top of Bobby Rahal right now, running in third place. We were hoping we might give Rick Mears a call today on the phone, see what he was thinking, but he was more interested in watching the television show, and he's seeing a whale of a battle being driven in his own car right now.
I think one of the most remarkable things right now is how hard Rahal is pushing up on Michael Andretti, who's right there on the right-hand side. Rahal in second place there. Now, this is the deal. Michael is not used to having somebody that hard.
And in the battle of the engines, we're talking a Ford in the front, the older Chevy in second place, the brand new Chevy sitting there in Paul Tracy's car in third place. This is the Cadillac assembly plant, not far from here in Detroit, where cars like the Pace car today was made, driven by Johnny Rutherford. For the moment, he came into the pits without any warning. The crew swarmed over the back of the car. Now they put the cowling back on the machine, assume that it's an electronic problem for the moment and that they will get this car refired. Eddie Cheever was running in 18th when he came into the pits, Gary Gerald.
Yeah, Paul, they just made the electronic changes you alluded to there on the right side pod, and now they're getting ready to fire the car and try to get him back out. The question is, will it fire? That's what they're waiting to see, and thus far it has not. Anxious moments, obviously, for this crew. They had such a great month of May at Indianapolis, but here at Belle Isle, it's not been good thus far. Now they're underpowered. He's back on the circuit.
So Eddie Cheever, who was fifth in the points coming into this race, is in a fight with Scott Goodyear, who, of course, fell out very early on for points.
This is the first time that we have seen Michael Andretti under this kind of pressure at all in 1992.
We mentioned Scott Goodyear out of the race. In fact, the first one actually out of the run. Right now he's with Jack Arute.
Paulie had hoped that it performed very well here, because if you look south here, you see Canada, and I know it was so important to play so well in front of your Canadian friends, Scott.
It really is. There's a lot of fans here today supporting myself and McKinsey Financial Corporation, so it's a disappointment, but we've struggled a bit this weekend on setup, and we felt we came up with something for the race that probably would have been comfortable. And we actually started just to move up a little bit, but then the back end started to get a bit squirmy, and then we had a fire, so there's probably a relation there. And the fire started to build, and as I got to the back section of the track, I just didn't want a chance coming in. And by the time I put the fire out with the extinguisher and the water the marshals gave me, I noticed the bodywork was starting to melt. So I'm just as happy I didn't try and make it around the last half of the track.
Paul, we'll see much more of this man in years to come.
You bet we will. And just in case you thought you may have just heard a Jack Aruteism, no. This is one of the few places in the United States where we can, in fact, look south into Canada. At the lead of the field, it's still Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal second, Paul Tracy third, and they still run very close together on this circuit. Michael Andretti looking very solid, having led all 22 laps thus far. Let's get a further update on Eddie Cheever. Here's Gary.
As we suspected, it was electronic related. They changed the battery. They're concerned that it's going to continue to happen. They've got another battery already on the wall. They don't know what is creating the drain in the battery, but they're afraid that they've got an ongoing problem that they're going to have to deal with. Not an optimistic outlook for Eddie Cheever.
Now, they got him 22 laps. They're going to have to change batteries twice more if that's the situation. And too bad for Eddie Cheever, who normally would excel on a circuit like this.
Yes, it certainly is going to be a mess. You know, it's so hard to pass here. Pretty soon we're going to start seeing there's little Al up in front of this group right here. Scott Goodyear right behind. And you're going to start seeing these guys lapping people pretty soon, Paul. Now, this is going to change the outcome and make passing a little bit easier, because when a guy comes up on a lap car and gets bogged down, the other guys may get a chance to pass him.
Unser Jr. looking ahead, trying to find John Andretti. Little Al runs in 8th place. John Andretti sitting up in 7th, but Little Al's got several good cars. Scott Pruett and Danny Sullivan lined up just behind him.
Yes, interestingly, 3 cars in a row here. You see Sullivan showing Scott Pruett that he's there, all built new for this year. Here we see the Galmer car, which of course won Indianapolis, then the True Sports Built in America car that has not really having a great season, and then another Galmer car.
And they have had some changes at True Sports, the car that maintains that number 10 car. Steve Horn, who was the former president of the company, resigned. Apparently a difference of opinion between the rest of ownership over what car they will race next year. Barbara Truman, executive in the company and the key player, of course, deciding that they will next year go over to a LOLA and abandon this project, and Steve Horn just simply didn't want to do that, so he stepped out of the operation.
Watch the wings as we look head on and sometimes ahead. And watch the vortices. Watch there, you can see Bobby Rahal's car. The little clouds, it looks like, on the right and the left-hand side of the wing. That's the vapor in the air, the moisture in the air caused by the high downforce and the air curling over called vortices.
We give you the full rundown after 20 laps, 77 laps, 161.7 miles, the scheduled distance around this circuit on Belle Isle in Detroit, right in the middle of the Detroit River.
Now you notice Bobby Rahal running right there behind Michael Andretti. Bobby is pressing him hard, but he's not making attempts to pass. He's keeping Michael running hard, but not trying to pass right now, Paul.
Looking back from Michael Andretti's car as the scenery sweeps away behind him. Bobby Rahal still trying to catch up and pass Michael, but Michael has dominated this race. Rick Mears, the team hopes that he's back in the car very soon.
Getting to know you.
I drove literally every car in the same class.
A look west from just over Belle Isle, the side of the track, up the Detroit River to the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit. Michael Andretti is still the leader after 26 laps of racing, followed by Bobby Rahal. Paul Tracy replacing Rick Mears runs in third place. His teammate Emerson Fittipaldi is in fourth, and Rahul Boycell runs now in fifth position. A great run for Boycell.
Tracy, however, has dropped back from being in touch with the leading duo to his third place position, now almost 5 seconds back.
John Andretti very suddenly slowed down a few seconds ago, and Jack Arute is now in his pit.
And Paul, the problem that they have encountered is in the gearbox as they take the wing and the rear gearbox cover off of John Andretti's car and they begin to go to work. One thing that you cannot do in a road course like this is run if the gears begin to jam up, and that seems to have been the case with young John Andretti.
All right, Bobby Unser, let's talk about this for a second. We're talking a track here where the surface changes from asphalt to concrete in a number of sections. Is that the kind of thing that affects the gearbox?
No, it really isn't, Paul. In fact, the racetrack is relatively smooth. You can watch as the cars go around the few places that you have bumps. Most of the track is very smooth, and that's what usually gets them. This one shouldn't have happened today, except, remember, it's 14 turns around the track. That equates to many, many shifts. And it's shifts or rough tracks. That's what gets the transmissions.
That's miserable work trying to change the gears in the transmission where all the fluid and the gears are very hot.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sam, they are so hot sometimes it will physically burn the guy's fingers. Often they'll change those gears with gloves on.
Boy, you got a great look at an open gearbox there. All the gears.
Well, this battle for the lead is fantastic. Rahal is just pressing Michael Andretti relentlessly. And Michael, you know, you think about it, he had such a good season going so often through the early part of this year, leading the races, having something go wrong. Now this time, the coloration of his race is a little different because he's got his brother Jeff badly hurt in a hospital back in Indianapolis. It's a kind of grayer, more mature Michael Andretti that we're seeing drive under great pressure today.
But if you watch Bobby Rahal, that's the old fox today. He's really playing a waiting game. He's not trying to pass Michael. He's just keeping him honest. And if he were to slack off, he won't allow him to slack off. If he does, then he would try a pass.
Driver summary there on Bobby Rahal. Paul Tracy has now just turned the fastest lap of the race. He is running alone, though, so he has a nice clear track sitting in front of him. But Bobby Rahal continues to sit right at the back of Michael Andretti and worry Michael on every corner.
Now this is going to make Roger Penske, talking about Paul Tracy, there's Bobby Rahal right there, but going to make Roger Penske think a little bit. It's going to make him think, what chassis setups are different between Paul Tracy and Emerson Fittipaldi? It's going to have them all thinking, because the Penske has been dubbed not quite as fast maybe this year as it was last year.
Here's Danny Sullivan heading for the pits. Gary Gerald's there.
Danny Sullivan has come in. We understand he cut down a right rear tire, so they were almost on schedule. They've also got a fuel leak back here behind the fuel leak hose. Nobody's aware of it. We're trying to keep an eye on that. We watched the front of the car. It's not a major fuel leak, but that's always a concern. Sullivan is now away, and the crew will turn its attention to the fuel that was leaking from the valve coming out of the tank.
Now, I don't know about that, but I can tell you the cut tires that we've been seeing so far, if you watch as the cars run, they run up on the curves a lot. They run very close. Watch how close that car was to the rail right there with Michael Andretti. They run really close to the walls or to the curves, and that's what's cutting the tires.
Michael Andretti still dominating 29 laps complete, the 77-lap scheduled distance. But Bobby Rahal is right there, and the key factor of the race may lie just ahead. The fact that now they have to work their way through traffic. And as narrow as this course is and as difficult as it is to pass, working through traffic could be a factor for exchanging the lead.
Yeah, they've come up on Brian Bonner there in A.J. Foyt's car. Michael gets by handily. Remember, there's a great rivalry. You see Bobby Rahal get by too. A great rivalry between Michael Andretti, who you see here, and Bobby Rahal. Michael was behind Bobby in most of the championship last year, took the lead to win the championship only at the very end of the season. A bitter, not a bitter rivalry, but a really great rivalry. Years before that, Michael was twice denied the championship by Bobby Rahal. So we're seeing two guys that have battled each other on and off the track for years.
13 cars remain on the lead lap as they work their way up through the field. Gary Gerald, what have they done about that fuel leak?
I need to tell you that it was not a fuel leak. We thought it was. What it was rainwater from the top of the tank that came cascading down around the valve when they pulled the hose out for the first time. Not a fuel leak. We thought it was. There was a lot of concern. Extinguishers were immediately here, but it was only water, thank goodness.
I'll bet it got everybody's attention. I was about to ask you if, in fact, they had fuel dripping out of there. That would have been a serious problem because they would lose the volume they needed to finish the race.
This is Sunset Drive here. Bobby, don't you think that it looks great the way they're sliding out of the turns here? I mean, this is a wonderful display of driving skill by a majority of the drivers in the race.
Oh, it certainly is. There's Robbie Gordon right there, ninth place. You know, I watch all these cars going through these corners. They're just in a nice drift. You'll notice the rubber from the previous races that I talked about earlier is getting worn off. The cars are very smooth now as they go through the turns.
Gordon is one of the brightest of the bright young drivers, just 23 years old, very much has the eye of Ford. It's a Ford engine in there. He's raced in a couple of NASCAR races, including the Daytona 500. In fact, he's the only racer in this event to have raced at Daytona, and he is a comer.
He's been put in there by Ford Motor Company. He's a designated Ford Motor Company driver, replacing Arie Luyendyk, who a lot of people would have questioned that. But if you watch Robbie today, maybe Ford didn't do too bad.
All right, we continue to watch the run here in Detroit. By the way, other winners this weekend in the Trans Am, Tommy Archer took the win. And in the Indy Lights this morning, Adrian Fernandez took another win. So 30 laps are now complete. Michael Andretti, just like at Indianapolis, continues to control this race. There's the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit, not far away.
This Track Fact is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? Many of you may have a digital readout on your dashboard in your family car, but if you think that's impressive, check out Scott Brayton's Amway car. Before the race, when the car is started for the first time, the crew likes to monitor these readings: oil pressure, fuel pressure, oil temperature, and the water temperature. The crew checks out everything, makes sure everything is at the proper level, and then they go racing. During the race, driver Scott Brayton likes a different reading. He likes to monitor the fuel level, which is very important, miles per hour, which is different in IndyCar racing because for many years the driver had no idea how fast he was going. Now he can tell. The boost. In IndyCar racing, they get 45 inches of boost. Oil temperature and water temperature. But the most important readout on this dashboard for Scott Brayton is the tachometer, so he'll know when exactly to shift. Everything that comes across on that dashboard is also recorded in the pits by the crew on a laptop computer. All the information you'll ever need comes through that dashboard.
In Detroit, the pit stops begin. Regularly scheduled stops. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, originally Emerson Fittipaldi was not going to take on tires, but then 4 laps ago he pleaded for new tires. They have made an adjustment on the wing, adding a half turn. He is off and away. Track positioning so important. They debated a long time as to whether to change tires or not.
And boy, he really smoked him as he came out of the pits. Bobby Rahal, this is the second time Bobby makes it into the pits. Bobby Rahal is in.
Well, that's a costly stop, Paul. 2 stops right in a row is really going to put Rahal back in the scoring. It's really bad. Now, we haven't seen the reason for it yet.
Rahal came in and made a stop while we were away. And also, Paul Tracy made a stop while we were away. So those have both come in. Now here is the leader of the race. Michael Andretti, and Gary Gerald waits for him.
Here's the man who's led every IndyCar race on the streets of Detroit or Belle Isle, for that matter, for the first time, getting service. They had contemplated a wing adjustment, decided not to, we are told, even though Michael complained earlier that the car was a bit loose. We watch and listen with the crew. Tom Wirtz holding a hand up. We'll watch for him to signal Michael away. 16.7 seconds.
Boy, great stop for the Newman-Haas crew, Michael Andretti, as he roars back into the fight. And he is a little more careful coming out of the pits and onto the track than some of the other drivers who have made their stops.
Well, I think he has a little bit more experience than some of them. For example, when we watched Paul Tracy lead, he looked like a kamikaze pilot going to war. But Michael came out really good, and that shows that Michael has developed to an awfully smart race driver.
Al Unser Jr. is there, Gary Gerald.
And the team, of course, that won at the Indy 500 just 2 weeks ago in action for the first time today. We're expecting a couple of full turns on the front wing, and there we see it. 2 dramatic turns. This car has been an ill-handling race car, and now Junior is way back into action. 15 plus seconds.
More front wing or less, Bobby?
Less front wing. It shows that he's loose. The rear end's been loose on the car. Took front wing out of the front, so it doesn't tighten so much. The rear end's going to be a lot better for him, he hopes.
So Al Unser Jr. rolls back into the fight as well as under green on this road course. The leaders now making their stops. Michael Andretti in and out, completing his first stop and retaining the lead as he did so. Paul Tracy moved up into second place because Bobby Rahal has now completed 2 stops.
And let's keep in mind, here's first, second, and third right there, really close together. Let's keep in mind also that during all these pit stops, the adjustments that we see, nobody understands this track. Nobody's had any experience here because it's a brand new one.
Tracy, you can see the benefit of his extremely fast pit stop and the fast exit that he got from the pits. It was risky, but it enabled him to squeeze ahead of Bobby Rahal. This is a position that he picked up in the pits, not by passing Rahal on the track.
All right, an update from Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, the reason for that quick stop by Paul Tracy was very simple. Roger Penske and Richard Buck elected not to take tires. It was a time stop to take on only 20 gallons of fuel. He was in and out very quickly.
Remember that Paul Tracy had a brilliant drive under very difficult circumstances at Phoenix earlier this year when he finished 4th. When he gets going in a race, and he's going in this race, he is very, very effective. We're seeing a great drive here by a young man.
Paul Tracy, as we take a look at the race summary at the conclusion of 30 laps, just turned the fastest lap of the race, about
just before his pit stop.
77 miles an hour, just before he came into the pits. So Paul Tracy is really flying. His pit stop, by the way, was just under 11 seconds, so he's had a spectacular stop.
But they may pay the penalty for not having changed the tires. But tactically, what they did was a very exciting thing. It picked him up a position to see if he can keep it.
Average speed at 82.3.
Whoa, he is trying to take the lead away from Michael Andretti.
So Paul Tracy now trying to climb on top of Michael Andretti. The average speed, remember, every lap in this race is a record.
Okay, and this is where Michael Andretti says, you know, I've never really raced Paul Tracy in a situation where we're battling for the lead. What is this guy like? I don't want to get taken out by him if he's going to put a banzai charge on me. So Michael's got to check his mirrors as well as try to drive a race in which he's leading the race.
They all carefully move past Jeff Wood, who gets out of the way of the battle for first, second, and third.
That was one of the...
Well, Teo Fabi into the pits. Gary Gerald, you're there?
Paul, it's the first time that Teo Fabi's had to make a pit stop in a race car since Le Mans a year ago. And right now, he comes down off the jacks. He roars away. We've got him in 13.6 seconds. Great stop.
Oh, super stop.
Now, with Teo Fabi, you watch as they did his front wings. They added front wing to his, which meant that he was pushing too much. They needed more downforce on the front, and that's what Teo's got. Now, Teo's a guy with tons of road race experience. He knew what he needed.
Back at the front of the field, it's Michael Andretti, now chased and, in fact, being followed by a very combative Paul Tracy. Bobby Rahal runs in 3rd place. We'll be back to Detroit after this message and a word from our ABC station.
Oh, you know what?
Look
right
at Paul
here,
Tracy.
this
Look
is
at Paul
amazing.
Tracy. He gets him. Paul Tracy takes the lead.
But you saw that Michael Andretti saw him coming too and decided to give him room. Now, this is a completely different complexion to the race. Can Paul Tracy lead a race under this sort of pressure? What happens when a young driver's blood is really up, as Paul Tracy's must be right now? Will he make a mistake now that he's the one under pressure?
He also passed Michael where you wouldn't expect a pass to happen. Now, it was a good pass, it was a clean pass, but it took Michael all of the experience not to pull down and squeeze Paul fall into the fence on the right-hand side. It's what we sat here and cringed at, if it could be made.
Major league race driving, though.
Boy, what do you think Rick Mears came off the couch on that one?
I think he did. I think he says, golly, you might bend my car there.
Now, stations, we're going to go to that break just as soon as we can, but with that pass for the lead, we just had to stay here in Detroit, and we want to watch for just a few seconds longer because Bobby Rahal is closing up on Michael, too. Here's the way it looked from the Goodyear blimp overhead of the track. And
boy, that looks like an almost impossible situation. If Michael hadn't realized what was happening, the leading two cars would have been out and Bobby Rahal would have been leading this race.
Michael even had to back off there a little bit, Sam, as it started happening. And, of course, you can watch Paul Tracy backed off a little bit, too, because it really looked like it was going to be a collision. It's a difficult place because Michael really has to go to the right, his right or our left. You see what happened there in order to make the corner, period.
So now with 38 laps complete and the first pit stop round done, Paul Tracy, driving for Roger Penske, has the lead of the race. It's his 7th career start, the first time he's ever led an IndyCar race. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC station. High above the Detroit River today, sporting the new corporate blue and yellow, is the Goodyear blimp stars and stripes. At the control, Captain Drew Marshall from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And they look down on the course. This is the sight they see as Paul Tracy has taken the lead from Michael Andretti and is running in the front of this race with 40 laps complete. Michael Andretti now in the position of chasing, and Bobby Rahal having to think about getting around Michael Andretti. Stefan Johansson runs 4th. Raoul Boisel runs 5th.
Remember, Johansson is a brilliant Formula One driver, so he's having his first shot here in these Indy cars. We're going to hear a lot of him.
Well, I'd say it's in Tony Bettenhausen's car, and ironically, Tony Bettenhausen, nice person, been a good oval track driver over the years past, but doesn't do well on the road circuits at all. And I'll bet he's really loving to see his car run up this fast, Sam.
Yeah, pretty good judgment to stick him in this car. Boy, in fact, he's put a couple of really excellent drivers in that car on road courses.
Here's a terrific battle
situation.
Look at Scott Brayton there, number 22, and Danny Sullivan right behind him. They are dicing for position, and they have been very, very close for some time. And, of course, you see now Michael Andretti coming up to put pressure on them from behind.
But Paul Tracy has already lapped.
They're fighting.
Nice pass. Tracy has passed this pair, and Michael Andretti under pressure from Bobby Rahal there in the black car now must make a pass on a pair of cars that have been dicing amongst themselves, both with very aggressive drivers. This is the kind of, you see now, Andretti, Michael, sees Brayton right ahead of him, or is it Sullivan?
That's
and
Sullivan.
knows that he has got to make a move and make it soon.
Let's go to the pits. Jack Arute, Emerson Fittipaldi's in.
Well, Paul, they called Emerson Fittipaldi in because there was a report that he was spraying something out of the rear end. The IndyCar officials, led by Bill Luchow, checked it over, and there was nothing. So taking advantage of this untimely stop, they added fuel, but this is costly for Fittipaldi's efforts.
Fittipaldi was running in 5th place at the time they called him in. He's dropped down through the field with that stop.
Well, there's a lot of arguments over officials calling people in like that. Often they scream that it's political. They scream everything under the sun, especially if they come in and there's nothing leaking. The officials really get knocked hard for that.
With Indy behind them, of course, they begin to think in terms of the championship, and right now Rahal is looking the best of the championship contenders.
Paul Tracy leads it. Michael Andretti runs in 2nd place. Of course, the Andrettis had a truly terrible day at Indianapolis. Michael dominating the race, but falling by the wayside. We asked Michael how he feels and how it's been since the Indy 500.
It's not my favorite racetrack, but I've been on worse racetracks, you know, and it's something that we have to deal with. I think this setting is one of the nicest settings you'll ever have for a racetrack here on Belle Isle. I think it's great. You know, I think there's some areas that it can be improved, and I'm sure it'll improve it next year, but for the first time, it's not bad. The surface has been very good. You know, it's very smooth. They did a good job, and seems to have pretty good grip. So, you know, all in all, it's not a bad grade. It's just I think the worst part about it, actually, there's two things. There's no straightaways and no places to pass, and that's the biggest critique I have for it. But everywhere else, I think it's a good place to race.
So So Michael, and how he feels about this track on Belle Isle.
Yes, and it's weird board, like with Michael's camera right here. Watch when you see those white spots on the track when you get to the turn. That's that fast-setting cement that they put down where the track was tearing up because it's a new track.
Paul Tracy, the leader of the run, followed by Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal, and Stefan Johansson. Let's get an update on our leader. Let's go to Jack Arute.
And Paul, one thinks that it's easy being at the cockpit of one of these cars. Consider this that just occurred. Paul Tracy was led for the last few laps, just radioed Roger Penske and said, "Where are we? Where are we?" And Roger Penske radioed back P1, meaning the lead. And all Tracy could say is, "Really?"
So a surprise Paul Tracy now.
Well, but let's see what that means to him. Let's hope that doesn't affect his concentration. You know, when you get ahead like this and you've gotten ahead by aggressive moves and you've been pushing hard, and then suddenly you find yourself saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't be pushing it quite so hard. I'm leading the race. This is where maturity, Bobby, is really a big factor.
Certainly, Sam. There's no question about that. But remember, another thing about Paul Tracy is he came from road racing. That's the reason Roger Penske hired him as a test driver, is for his road racing ability. So he's obviously adapting to this track pretty good because this cat's leading the race.
With a solid run, Paul Tracy started fourth, now first, as he works his way around this circuit, 2.1 miles around, 14 turns, and as you can see, a most beautiful racetrack.
You know, if he wins this race just 1 year after Roger Penske signed him, we're really looking at a piece of automotive racing history because we're going to see an awful lot more from him.
So with 44 laps complete, Paul Tracy looking very solid. Michael Andretti, though, running in second place, and that's Teo Fabi replacing Mario Andretti, that sits just ahead of Paul Tracy on the racetrack. In third place, it's Bobby Rahal. Stefan Johansson is fourth. Raul Boisel runs in fifth place. The ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix, a terrific run here on Belle Isle. And on the 4th of July, the world's largest firework festival. Isn't that beautiful? All from Detroit. Back at Belle Isle in Detroit, the ITT Automotive Detroit Grand Prix. Great shot overhead from the helicopter as we take a look at Paul Tracy accelerating away and heading west. Just behind him, Al Unser Jr., the Indianapolis champion. He was just lapped as little Al runs in 8th place. Here is 4th place Stefan Johansson as he comes into the pits. He's had a solid run here today and looks to be fairly routine, and Johansson is back into the fight. Still working on several cars in the pits. You got a glimpse there for a moment of John Andretti's car. They had that problem with the gearbox. It's still sitting there.
91 Penske car Johansson is driving.
And Scott Pruett just in front of him.
Pruett is now running 6th or 5th ahead of Johansson. That's a place picked up. Pruett has been very consistent today in this true sports car, about which there is so much controversy. Should they continue to put money into this all-American design or just give up and buy a Lola? It's a question of, do you put good money after bad, or is the whole concept of the true sports car about to come right? The man suffering, of course, you see there, Scott Pruett, a young driver that really deserves a good chance.
All right, let's go back down to the pits and Gary Gerald.
John Andretti's been fighting a gearbox problem all day long. It's finally claimed your chances in this race. It's got to be so frustrating when you think you get it repaired, you go back out, and then a short time later, here you are again.
Well, you know, typically if you have to come in the pits for anything, then you're out of luck at winning the race, and that's what we're here to do. The Pennzoil car was working really well, and you know, I guess you're just bad luck for me, Gary. Every time you're in my pit reporting, I got a gearbox problem, so maybe I can push you off on somebody else for next.
But the last time we were here, a sign fell and hit you on the head. That hasn't happened thus far. Tell me quickly about your first impressions of this circuit, the difficulty in trying to get grip and to pass people.
Well, I'll tell you, it's quite a fun circuit, and you know, I had a good time out there. I had a couple. You have to kind of almost touch wheels to get past somebody. But you know, when you're running at the front, the guys are good racers, and you know, you can expect that kind of room. So if you get a run on somebody, you can make it by. But it's a little difficult.
Thank you, John. Let's go back to Paul Page.
So Al Unser Jr. continues in his battle on this circuit.
Boy, this is a great battle with young Robbie Gordon pursuing him, putting some real pressure on Gordon here in his first race in the Indy cars. pressuring a former IndyCar champion and the current IndyCar winner. He told me yesterday, young Gordon did, that driving these cars is like riding a runaway horse. He's really not sure what he's doing there yet, but he's keeping his foot down. And you see right now he's going to try an ambitious pass and get away with it.
Inside Little Al and picks up 8th place.
That was a good pass and a good place to pass. The Galma car that Little Al is driving is opposed to the Lola car that you see Robbie Gordon in just ahead of Little Al right there. Now, they've obviously been having problems with the Galma chassis here on the road circuit. Now, they were very fast, if you remember, at Long Beach with these cars. As Danny Sullivan won with one, Little Al almost won with it. But they've not been working well here at all. Little Al touched the wall yesterday with it. They definitely have some sort of a Galma problem.
Jr., of course, with this car, won the Indianapolis 500. And there goes Michael as he comes streaming past Little Al. And Little Al continues to have problems as Rahal comes past. So that's a car that, without question, Al Unser Jr. is struggling with.
There's a class situation, though. He could have held Rahal up quite fair and square, but he knew there was a battle and an important one, and he let him go by.
Let's go down to the pits, Jackaroot.
Paul, just moments ago, something that we have said many times that Roger Penske did not engage in, he has just done. He has sent word down to Emerson Fittipaldi's team to let Paul Tracy get by. In other words, if Tracy has to put a lap on Emerson Fittipaldi, it's that.
And Scott Pruett's in trouble. Scott Pruett ran off one of the runoff areas. That's happened to him before.
Well, it happened at Long Beach earlier this year, and it was a brake failure there. It makes you speculate what could it be this time.
In fact, I asked Scott about that just last night, and he said some brake line in the front of the car at Long Beach came loose in the practice, sent him head-on to the barrier. Here he is. We don't know how he got here, but it appears to be a head-on into the barrier. And
every time he starts to do well, he was third fastest in practice at Long Beach when that happened. He's not getting out really quickly. Remember how badly he hurt his feet in an accident 2 years ago. So every time he goes head on into something, you worry. Looks like a blown engine,
line
maybe?
let go on the engine.
Yeah.
He tried to slow it down by brushing the wall.
Oh, helpless passenger. But I think with those absorbing tires, you know, he's going to be fine.
Look how close that was to Ted Prappas.
Oh, yeah.
Now Scott is obviously safe and sits and waits and doesn't want to get out of the car. They've offered the opportunity. He says, no, I think I'll stay in it, but I don't know why. They're not going to be able to tow that thing back.
You know, the tire system is very good here around the track. It's a narrow and confined track, but look, his energy is absorbed quickly by those tire barriers.
There was obviously something on the right rear broke because the right rear fell down on the car. The tub was scraping the ground is the reason that he couldn't get it stopped.
So now we're under full course yellow because of this situation. And once again, Scott Pruett has seen the tires up close. Once again, the tires have helped in cushioned the blow.
Notice that as they are lined up right now, Emerson Fittipaldi is immediately behind Paul Tracy. Ha-ha. What do you think of this as a tactical advantage for Paul Tracy as you look at Paul Newman?
Could be very embarrassing for Emerson Fittipaldi. I think it has been so far to have this rookie run away with it like he has been.
Well, the opportunity to hold up slower cars vanished right away as Emerson pulled to the side.
Fittipaldi out of the way, the green flag flying again, and back to racing speed. Paul Tracy being chased by Michael Andretti. On board, Al Unser Jr., who runs in 7th place and is in trouble. Al Unser Jr. runs right off of the race course.
He got out a little bit wide. He couldn't get in. You saw him let off the brakes, try to turn it. Finally just had to hit the brakes and right into the tire while he went.
That's exactly where he had the trouble yesterday that he was able to correct and get going again from.
Just think how bad it would be to hit that rail right there, the steel rail behind the tires. That really is the miracle thing that's come along in championship racing lately.
17,000 of those tires here in Detroit.
Second car came off with him. Was it this car, Fittipaldi, as he tries to come up to speed? So Al Unser Jr., the Indy champion, runs off the course, but they get him going again. And Paul Tracy remains the leader of this race.
Emerson Fittipaldi is normally the fastest of the road racers on the Penske team. He's really been having problems today, so I suspect he's got some bad... Look at him. His car is just literally all over the racetrack, so Emerson's got something that's not working too good.
Paul Tracy leading Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal.
We are used to seeing Michael Andretti as the sort of enfant terrible of road racing here. I mean, the young guy who can really stand on the gas. And now look at Paul Tracy, a new guy on the block, suddenly really pulling the trigger here. You guys didn't like the use of my term enfant terrible, did you? Let me just say this is Belle Isle. There's a French influence here. We're near Canada. Let me have a break here.
We're in the U.S. American racing here, Sam, with Paul Tracy, a Canadian.
A Canadian who can speak French and would know exactly what I'm talking about.
Michael Andretti now closes up, trying to close in. Paul Tracy at front, Michael Andretti second, Jack Arute. Oh! And Michael Andretti moves outside of Paul Tracy, tries to grab him. Jack Arute, you had an update on the leaders?
Yes, Paul. One thing to remember is that both teams are situated at opposite ends of pit road.
Michael glanced off the wall. And looks like Tracy got it too. And Rahal goes into the lead.
The Fox.
Two cars. Looks like both of them brushed the wall. And Rahal takes the lead of this race. But both Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti continue on. Now Michael moves alongside of Paul Tracy, tries to get under him.
Michael has decided to have a shoot-off. He says, hey, this young man cannot be run away from this race the way he is. I'm going to show him that I am the fastest. And boy, what a contest we're seeing. And he passed him back.
Michael Andretti takes Paul Tracy, but it's a battle for second place because Rahal, sitting, waiting, watching, moved up and took the lead.
Boy, Rahal was alert to that, as he so often has been to opportunity, but here, his reflexes, his instinct for taking the lead, incredible. Tracy now seems to be slowing.
Paul Tracy, and Michael Andretti bounces off the back of Unser Jr., ricochets off the wall, and he continues on.
Well, what a race. I mean, I don't know where they've hit the walls, bumped each other so many times here. You wonder how they keep running. These cars, incidentally, are very fragile. Paul Tracy, we saw him touch a wall a while ago. That could be that he ruined the alignment on the car, and that's where his handling went away.
I think many drivers would probably say, that's it, I brushed the wall a couple times, I'm taking it in. Not Michael Andretti.
I was going to say maybe these cars seem very strong because Michael Andretti hit the wall too, and he's still able to run. Meantime, it should be noted that Bobby Rahal is the leader in the championship, the PPG IndyCar Championship, and he is now, of course, extending his lead in the championship if he can win this race.
Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy continue at it, though you've seen the back end come loose on Paul Tracy's car several times. That was Unser Jr. that they just moved around once again. And Paul Tracy driving certainly an ill-handling car. Here's a replay of the situation. They bounce. Well, maybe they don't actually touch at that point.
Oh, yeah, they touched there, but not again. They touched wheel to wheel.
And both of them.
And now here goes Rahal. Oh, look at that.
Michael hit the wall twice.
Paul doesn't seem to get into it, but he does get up into the loose stuff on the outside, lays down a pretty good mark off of his right rear, and Rahal takes the lead.
Rahal, of course, much older than these two young drivers. He must have had a sly old grin on his face as he shot by him.
But this just shows you the winning attitude that he has. He says, hey, this is enough. I'm going to show this young man that I'm faster than he is.
This was the other situation then, as Michael came up, bounced off the rear of Little Al's car, rimmed the guardrail for a while, and then kept going.
That's right, where Little Al rubbed the rail yesterday. Now, when he rubbed it, what seemed like no harder than what Michael did, got both the front end and the body work on his.
Bobby, you talked about the fragility of the car. Now, do you think after seeing that again, would it be in Michael's mind now, I've got a car that may break on me suddenly?
Oh, absolutely, Sam, no question about it. These things, even though it looks strong to you, I promise they're fragile.
Yeah. This was with Unser Jr. when he lost control of it a few laps ago and slid off, taking the wall head on. The tire wall, fortunately.
It's a terrible thing when you're trying to stop like that and the car just won't stop. Of course, remember, out of the groove, it's very slippery because that's where all the trash from where the cars are running, all the loose pavement, all the tire chunks that come off, all the little stuff like that lays on the outside.
So now Bobby Rahal has the lead of the race for the first time in the day. And Michael Andretti is 7 seconds back, trying to catch up as best he can. Then about 2 seconds back from this car, Michael Andretti, is Paul Tracy. Sudden change of events here on Belle Isle in Detroit.
There's just a time when you watch how these guys get like that they say, hey, this is the shoot-off. I'm just going to go for it. Boy, it was a knockdown and drag out there for a while.
59 laps now complete, 77 laps, the scheduled distance.
This is the first time that Michael Andretti has really been under attack in this season. He may not have won the other races, but he has been the fastest. Today, he has really had to go to the, oh, look at that, front wing section off possibly one of the Ganassi cars.
Just a little bit off the line. I wonder if they'll be able to retrieve that without going full course yellow.
Well, one of the course workers should just jump out, grab it, and run with it. It won't be too bad because the cars get spread out pretty far.
I'll tell you what, you do have to give credit to the course workers like the SCCA corner marshals that are here. 500 of them to handle a race like this. There's the piece out in the track. And they don't get paid a dime. They volunteer for this because they love racing, and they are great.
Yeah, another thing, there, you're very right on that, Paul. That piece that's laying out to the wing is carbon fiber. It's very light, but it would cut a tire very easily. It wouldn't really hurt anything else on a car, though.
The car that is missing it has a real understeer condition. Let's have another look at the pass. Watch Rahal. Don't be distracted by the two guys battling for the lead. Watch him sneak by suddenly, having timed it all so perfectly. Here he comes on the right of the screen. Look at Rahal.
Both of them were in trouble, and Rahal just came in, swooped into the line of the corner, and right on out and away.
Michael be a little bit mad at Paul Tracy for that because he had a kind of like an even car up with him when he got alongside of him, and Tracy went clear to the outside wall. Of course, pushed Michael into the wall a little bit.
So as a result, this man, number 12, Bobby Rahal, and another car off the course.
Christian Danner, a very promising young guy from Europe who is doing quite well in this race. He's an ex-Formula One driver, a BMW driver from Munich.
Now we've seen a couple of cars in this position. Bobby Unser, are maybe we getting a slicker course?
Well, I think what you're seeing, Paul, is the pavement is wearing out. Not really bad like we saw yesterday, but the little shavings they're getting down there, like I mentioned a bit ago, they're throwing them to the outside of the groove where cars don't run. So when a guy does miss the groove for whatever reason and gets out there, it won't turn and it won't stop.
Yesterday during the Trans Am race, a couple of the corners really wore out, and they put concrete in those sections overnight, and they've held up for the most part fairly well.
And we watched them sweep it up. In one corner, as they would sweep it up, they would have a half of a 15-gallon barrel full of the shaving. So that shows you just like running on marbles.
And Nick Fenoro waves twin yellow flags. That tells the drivers that we are on a full course yellow once again.
And look at Carl Hogan, the co-owner of Bobby Rahal's car. Look at the frustration on his face as he saw that yellow come out. That wipes out their lead.
So Rahal is in the front of the field as we are at a full course yellow once again. It is the 4th of the day. Not the only race course in the area. Between this island and the shore, they race the unlimited hydroplanes here every year. But now any advantage that Bobby Rahal may have been able to pull out is gone. The question mark will have to be on this car that we ride on board with at the moment, because it's ricocheted off the wall not once but several times. And Michael Andretti seems more than confident in it as Rahal picks up the pace, hoping that he is going to run fast to a green flag, hoping too, I'm sure, that he surprised Michael just a little bit. Paul Tracy sits in 3rd place as the green comes out. We're racing again now, 60 laps. The rundown is what you look at. We actually race at 65. 77 laps, the scheduled distance here.
There's Rahal staying in the groove, being careful. Remember, the tire's a little bit cold now. They're not warm yet. The track's a little bit cold because they've been going slow. Rahal will be very careful because he doesn't have too many laps till the end, and he really needs to keep this lead.
Hanging around Rahal's crew yesterday afternoon, I noticed everybody seemed to be in a really good mood. I asked about it, and they said, we probably have the highest morale of any team in IndyCar racing right now. A stable situation, a leader they really believe in.
On board the helicopter, aerial films giving us these great shots as they fly over the race course. Ken Sanborn, Brian McMahon, they're doing a terrific job keeping track of these cars. But notice, the race cars are much faster than the helicopter.
Yeah, they certainly are, Paul. This is a little big left and right-hand turns from the long straightaway. Well, the only straightaway we have here, a little short straightaway here coming off. This one goes into a real fast, nice right-hand turn.
Well, Rahal certainly hasn't disappeared from Michael, though he is inching away slowly. Paul Tracy is maintaining position.
You see this beautiful parkland atmosphere. This Belle Isle was actually designed by the same man that designed Central Park in New York. So this is a historic place.
Rahal is a little bit more of a conservative driver than Michael is, and he'll just really try to keep the car straight and be a little bit smoother. Michael's car, if it's still straight and in alignment, it's got to just be short of a miracle after all that bumping that he's had.
It doesn't look quite as fast as it did to begin with, does it? He's not flinging it around with quite the same abandon. It'll be interesting to see if he is slowing, whether Paul Tracy can move up to attack.
Well, Michael's still using the curbs as he goes through the corners. There's Paul Tracy, but he's not driving with the abandon that he used earlier, and the back end appears to be running a little loose through each of these corners, so there could be a problem. Michael Andretti, as he bounces off the walls, if they only change by a couple thousandths of an inch the alignment of the car, it can make an absolute world of a difference. Now let's get an update on Paul Tracy from Gary Gerald.
Paul, this is one of those interesting radio conversations. We're told that Roger Penske told Tracy, bring this thing home. Put pressure on if you have to. So you can get a feel of the stance they're taking in the Penske camp as Tracy fills in for Rick Mears.
Well, I think Roger Penske, for example, I know Roger, driving for him for as long as I did. There's Paul Tracy locking up his tires going into the turn. That was kind of bad. But Roger Penske would rather Tracy not win the race and still bring the car home in good shape and put an investment in his driver by finishing the race, getting experience from that rather than the crash.
He had that fine fourth at Phoenix. If he put a fine third or even a second in here today, what a great season for Paul Tracy.
That blue car right there, number 11, that's third place, Rahal Boycell. He has some distance to make up. He's about 5 seconds behind Michael Andretti and Paul Tracy.
Boycell's a good race driver, and I think he's one of the guys like Eddie Cheever like Leyendyke, that's been overlooked so much, Paul.
So Boycell runs in 4th place. He is right now chasing Danny Sullivan, who is a lap behind the leaders, running in 6th place. His best finish in the IndyCar is 3rd at the Indy 500 in 1989. Best on a road course, 4th, the 88 Long Beach. So he's in that position right now.
People that know Boycell just love him. He's a fun guy to be with. He's a little bit shy, but once you get to know him and he opens up, his grin, his infectious good humor, he's a wonderful man to be around.
He's a good prankster, Sam, when you get to know him a little bit.
Yes, he is. In fact, it's wise not to get to know him too well because of that.
So Boycell and Sullivan battle, not for position, but on the course.
Sullivan's in the other Galmer car.
The stats on Rahal, who now replaces Hiro Matsushita in this car. Remember, Hiro broke his femur in a crash during practice at the Indianapolis 500. Rahal has taken over this car for the time being, but he had been promised a ride by Dick Simon for the remainder of the year, whether that situation developed or not. So now in front of the field it remains Bobby Rahal. Michael Andretti dominated early on. He runs in 2nd and is trying to catch up to Rahal. He runs 3.5 seconds back. 68 laps are complete. 77 circuits of this 2.1 mile course, the scheduled distance. So now we're coming down to decision time here in Detroit.
And remember, if you just turned in, Michael's car has been bent or banged around an awful lot, so he may be bent just a little bit. So maybe that's the reason he's not catching Bobby Rahal.
There's the top 5 with great runs for both Boycell and Stefan Johansson. The Henry Ford Museum here in Detroit. Boy, you want to see some magnificent machines. It's worth a visit. We'll be back. Paul Tracy rolls very, very slowly by the side of the course. Paul Tracy was running in 3rd behind Michael Andretti, and now he's in trouble.
Boy, I don't know what's happened. We don't see anything wrong right now. The car seems to be straight. It looks like a power problem, like you just run out of power, Paul, because nothing appears to be bent. He's coasting and rolling very easy.
Visor up, Paul Tracy checking the mirrors for oncoming traffic, but rolling to a stop.
He isn't going to make it back to the pit. What a disappointment for Paul Tracy. It reminds me, of course, 2 weeks ago, the disappointment to Michael Andretti. Will this bring out the yellow?
Yes,
possibly?
it will.
Yeah,
it'll have to, because he's on the course blocking people, Sam.
Yeah,
very
so this is one last chance for Michael Andretti to counterattack against Bobby Rahal. But it appears that Andretti, you see Tracy's crew here, obviously they must know by now what it is. What this means is Michael Andretti will have one last shot at Bobby Rahal when they close up.
What a terrible way to end such a brilliant drive that Paul Tracy has done today.
But I should point out they have not gone yellow yet. We are not under yellow conditions. They continue to race. Michael Andretti here, car number 1, runs in 2nd place, 4 seconds behind Bobby Rahal. But look how precarious that car is positioned, right where you turn into that corner, Bobby.
Well, it just doesn't seem right that they haven't thrown a full course yellow. I mean, they just about have to, because the car is blocking part of the track.
They've finally done it. We go full course yellow now. And that will close up Michael Andretti right behind the leader of the race, Bobby Rahal.
We're going to see a finish here that looks like it's going to be as good as we've seen in the race all day.
But you can see that had the course not gone yellow, it was Rahal's race. There was a big enough gap there. So this yellow is going to play a big role in the outcome of this race.
The other question will be how they cycle the pace car. Let's go to the Penske pits, Jack Arute.
And Paul, it's not a very happy moment right now for Richard Buck and the rest of Rick Mears and actually Paul Tracy's team today. What happened?
We're not sure right now, Jack. There's damage to the car somewhere. He's having a hard time selecting the gears or whatnot. We're not sure if that's when Michael hit him or what happened, but...
Well, yeah, there was contact out there, and did he report any problems after that contact hit?
Yeah, he was having difficulty, but, I mean, we're out. You know, the day's over. It's a shame because he was doing a superb job, as we all could see. We'll have to get him next time.
Well, this has been a very disappointing year. Despite a fourth-place finish at Phoenix, it's been tough for Team Penske this year.
It has been difficult. Richard Buck, very disappointed, like all the Penske team members. They're intense in their pursuit of motorsports. So now under full course yellow, Bobby Rahal, with Michael Andretti closed up just behind. And let's not count out Raoul Boisel and Stefan Johansson, who will close up as well. They are all still on the lead lap. Roger Penske wondering about his driver, Paul Tracy, where the car is. Will they get it back? Now, the situation that brought this all about. Well, this was much earlier. This is some of the stuff that's happened earlier. Take a look at this. Ted Prappas drives over the nose of the ailing car of Scott Pruett as he goes head-on into the wall. The pass that's got Bobby Rahal into the lead is Paul Tracy and Michael Andretti scrubbed against one another and then brushed the wall as Bobby Rahal took the lead. Looking at the same situation, another view. They touch. Rahal sees it wisely, moves offline to the inside, takes the pass, and Rahal takes the lead. Then Michael Andretti, when he got against Unser Jr. and then slid along the wall. But that car is still running in second place, but has the damage done in that contact affected it so badly that it cannot challenge Bobby Rahal. Christian Danner, as he ricocheted off one of Chip Ganassi's cars and into the barrier. No one hurt in any of these situations. Speeds here substantially lower than Indianapolis. There's Paul Tracy as he is under tow back to the pits after a rather spectacular day. Now they're actually pushing him to the side. It'll be a sprint when we come back. Tony Bettenhausen, his car runs in fourth place right now, and Jack Arute's there.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, Tony Bettenhausen had to watch the Indianapolis 500 from a suite. He had hoped to be in it. Today, you're not behind the wheel. You're the car owner. You're one of these owner-driver types. Stefan Johansson, first time, he's in fourth place. But there are some concerns. We understand they're reporting a problem.
Well, they said they saw some smoke and a possible fire, but he just came by here, and the Amex Penske looks fine. So we got to get around 3.5 more laps, and it's a good effort on everybody's part.
What's tougher, being an owner or being a driver?
Well, you got a little bit more control when you're sitting in the race car, but you got to sweat a little bit here. But Stefan's done a fantastic job today.
And Paul, he went to the drivers' meeting with Johansson and tried to interpret what the drivers and what Wally Dallenbach was talking about. Sometimes he'd lean over and say, "Don't believe what they just said."
73 laps are now complete. 77 laps, the scheduled distance. We're set up for a 4-car sprint to the finish.
I think Tony Bettenhausen looks a whole lot better as a car owner than he does as a driver, because that Johansson has really shown him that this car is quick. His whole team looks a lot better today.
As you look at Carl Hogan, realize that Bobby Rahal's car is the only one of that first group of 4 cars that are on the same lap, back to Johansson in fourth, that's probably got a car that's in totally fine shape for racing right now.
What will be critical is how the cars line up behind the pace car and what the presence of overtaking traffic will do.
Well, one thing, though, that the yellow has done in Rahal's favor is that there will be no overtaking of lap cars that he would have to do in his run to the finish.
There's Bobby Rahal. He leads the group. Right behind him is Michael Andretti. Just behind that, the blue car, is Raoul Boisel. Then Danny Sullivan sits back, and you see Johansson sits back a bit yet further. Green flag comes out, and here we go, a run to the finish as fast as they can go. Nothing should be in the way to stop them now. Johansson has been caught back behind some slower traffic, so it's a 3-car fight at the front of the field, and Rahal tries to pull away from Michael Andretti.
And remember, no matter what there's not going to be any cars in front of them for a little while, so it's going to be a shoot-off between these two cars. The guys that have been two of the three fastest all day, Bobby Rahal and Michael Andretti.
Rahal nailed that restart. That was step one to winning the race. There's Sandy Andretti, and her husband on the right of the screen now. He's driving his heart out in a crippled car. Can he keep with Rahal? You see Carl Hogan there. This is a very exciting finish.
Debbie Rahal is not in the pits for Bobby. On Tuesday, she gave birth to their child in Columbus, and she no doubt has got this tuned up on the television and keeping track of Bobby Rahal's positioning. Look at Michael Andretti as he closes down just a bit on Rahal.
It's such a difficult thing for cars running. Boy, look at Michael.
He is
high on the curbs. He's really trying to get some new traction. It's so difficult for two cars running the same speed to pass here. All except for Paul Tracy, who we saw earlier.
Michael Andretti driving everywhere he can. Paul Newman watches on as the fight continues for the lead. Already they have left Rahal Boycell in their dust. Look, you look back a straightaway, you don't see that third place car there. The fight very definitely for the lead, and Michael doing all he can.
And obviously Michael's car's not been too bad, out of shape from the previous knockarounds that he's had all day. He's in good shape because you don't run this close to Bobby Rahal and this fast without the car being in good shape.
Now just under 2 laps to go. Michael Andretti is still there and trying. There is no doubt that he is having to compensate heavily this car, which is obviously a handful for him. And Michael comes sideways. Michael comes sideways as Rahal is now alone. Michael lost the back end, and Michael now blocks the race course. Here comes Boycell through, picking up second place. Johansson comes through, picking up third, and Michael Andretti is in a very precarious position on this course, as Bobby Rahal should be looking at the white flag this time around.
Boy, he's in a bad place, period. All these guys are getting the yellow flag that we can't see right now, but viciously, because he's in such a terrible place as far as another car hitting him in the side would be.
Plus, it's going to drop him to 5th because 2nd, 3rd, and 4th all went right by him. Here it comes from the in car. You see, he's driving almost over his head here, correcting to every slide. Look at this. He hits the curb.
Up over the curb right there. Completely up on top of the curb, Sam.
There it is.
Back in, got around, he got it stopped.
Oh, look at the right
collapsed front suspension.
Tie rod all bent down there, so that car's not going anywhere now, and certainly is a causal factor of the accident. Let's go to Gary Gerald.
Oh, the only radio conversation, he said, it just spun around on me. It just spun around. Great frustration again for Michael Andretti.
So Bobby Rahal now working on the final lap of this race and running all alone, a good 10 seconds ahead of Rahal Boycell, who runs in 2nd place. Johansson runs 3rd. And there's Carl Hogan hoping his car makes it around.
Yes, Paul, he certainly is. And another thing on Michael's deal is a real good chance that that right front folded from a previous accident, and that's what caused Michael to spin.
And look at the leader of the race, Bobby Rahal, with nothing in front of him and very little behind.
This will be his 2nd victory of the year, and it will extend his points lead dramatically because none of the people that were pursuing him in the points have done well today.
2nd time in a row we've seen Sandy Andretti with that shy smile while her husband is out of the race. You can't tell if it's sadness that he's out or happiness that he's out and safe. Bobby Rahal now working on the final lap, just a few hundred feet to go as the crowd begins to applaud along the sidelines. And Bobby Rahal accelerates now, looking ahead toward the checkered flag, and there it is. Bobby Rahal has taken the win here in Detroit, and he leads the PPG points now by 19 over Unser Jr. A 22nd career win for Rahal. It ties him for 11th on the all-time victory list with Michael Andretti. Bobby Rahal has taken the lead here. Boycell comes in 2nd. In 3rd, Stefan Johansson, Michael Andretti. Well, we'll have to wait and see where Michael ends up. But as they flag this race, Michael Andretti may have been able to pull out a possible 4th place position. We'll check for official results. Bobby Rahal wins the race, followed by Boycell. Johansson, Michael Andretti is being shown in 4th place. Danny Sullivan in 5th. As we look down through the remainder of the top 10. Good finish for Tail Fabi, replacing Mario Andretti. We don't have time to talk to Bobby Rahal now, but it's been a great day in Detroit. This is Paul Page for Sam Posey, Bobby Unser, Jack Arute, and Gary Gerald. So long from Michigan.